Hi, very nice to be here with you. My name is Corazza Bildt. I'm a member of the European Parliament, elected in Sweden 2 years ago, and I'm in charge actually of the report of the European Parliament on how we can improve the retail sector in Europe. So your conference is really more actual than ever, and I'm glad to hear that you had a very lively and interesting debate, that Mr. Bergevin from the European Commission was there. I would like to say that we worked very, very closely with you, and that the study that the Commission did was really provided a very, very good basis for us to move forward with very concrete recommendations on how to have a more fair and efficient retail market in Europe. I would invite everybody to have a look at the report. It's only 2.5 pages, and we have voted it just last week in the Internal Market and Consumer Protection Committee. So it's happening now. We're going to vote it in plenum in June.
Why is this report so timely? How does it respond to the current challenges of the EU's internal markets?
First of all, the retail is really important to create growth, competitiveness and job in Europe, even during the crisis. It's one of the sectors that really kept higher levels of employment and then managed to really go through the crisis positively. Well, what we are doing is really to try to stress that when everybody's talking about the financial crisis, the economic governance, which is of course extremely important, the real economy should be put back at the highest political agenda and at the center of the debate if we really want to achieve the challenge of making Europe more competitive. Retail is more important than people think. It's also services. It's not only movement of goods. And in that respect, it was really important that our work was parallel and integrated with the great work that the European Union has been doing on the Single Market Act. The new Single Market Act that we have adopted just a month ago is really a milestone, a historical step towards market completion, market integration, removing the obstacles. And retail is recognized now as a pillar of the internal market, and I'm extremely satisfied about that.
What is your vision in the retail market report?
The vision is that retail should be given more dignity as a really an important driver of growth, competition and jobs in Europe. That is not only job creation, but it's flexible jobs in the positive sense, jobs for young people, for immigrants, for newcomers, for very highly educated people, but also first comers into the job. It's a very complex operation to manage a retail properly. It's not just sell a banana and get 1 penny or €1 back, and all its dignity should be really recognized. I think what we do in this parliamentary report, we put for the first time on the map of the European Union retail for long term. So my vision is that our report should be a living document, engaging the industry, engaging the stakeholders, engaging the consumer protection organizations in really getting forward long term that the European Union will continue to deal with improving retail.
You mentioned free movement of goods and services. Could you give some examples of obstacles that you have come across in your consultations with stakeholders?
Yeah, as I am myself an entrepreneur, I really try to have a very action-oriented report. I mean, the report is a call for action. So we have identified and listed, which I'm sure you have done throughout this conference as well, concrete obstacles like, why should you test twice a toy when it's already in the British market to sell it in the German market? And why should this extra test be put both from countries but also from retailers? Why do you have to repackage a cheese to move from Holland to France just because you have different packaging sizes or rules? Why do you have to have different procedures to sell chocolate in Spain? And even some retailers have been sued for national exceptions or national additional rules. Why do you need a certificate for torture, anti-torture, to sell chairs in Italy? And again and again, why can't you sell carpets for hotels in Hungary when they have special regulations for fire? I'm just taking a few examples, but so many more exist that show that the fundamental freedom of movements of goods and services throughout the European Union, which is really the basis of the internal market, is yet full of hinders. So we are calling, we voted for it, to remove these hinders, to free movements of goods, remove borders, barriers, and burdens.
Market access and freedom of choice are important for today's consumers. What problems do you see here, and how should they best be addressed?
Yes, another debate that is extremely actual. You have seen in Britain, for instance, The Economist a couple of weeks ago had a big piece on Tesco and so on. The eternal debate on giving access to the consumers wherever they live, whatever they do, and whatever their mobility is, which means freedom of choice and access to the consumer, also in remote, isolated areas, town centers, countryside, also to consumers that don't have a car, who may be a little older, who don't have the same mobility. It's a matter of access to consumer. It's also a matter of security in not completely emptying old towns, not completely emptying rural areas. It's a matter of social contact, human contact, the possibility to have the shop where you talk. It's about traditions. It's about the environment. There are many components to it. But what we try to do is to promote and encourage this balance between big shopping center, one-stop shop, shop as entertainment, outlets where people go an entire day with the entire family and just stroll around and shop at the same time, the big supermarkets and the small shops driven by the market, not top-down by regulation. But it's important that we involve the stakeholders, the shopping centers owners, the shops, the boutiques, of course the urban planners and so on, in trying to drive a debate and have a better dialogue. What we're also trying to do, of course, as European policymakers, is to respect subsidiarity, which means that we are focusing on what we can do at European level, where we can really have the best added value. We're not going to enter urban planning, but we recognize that urban planning in some areas have really been putting some extra licenses, requirements, for instance, quotas on how big a shop should be, and so creating hinders that really go against the letter and the spirit, for instance, of the Service Directive. So we call for full implementation of the Service Directive, full implementation of the goods package, which calls for recognition of certification, for instance. So full implementation of existing internal market legislation to really provide this freedom of movement.
Contractual and commercial practices in business-to-business relations are a complex subject. How can we achieve a fairer retail market while retaining a vibrant competition?
Yes, I'm happy to see and hear that you have not been shining off by dealing with the most controversial issues, which is, of course, a fairer relationship. There is a feeling and a perception that there's market dominance by big actors, big supermarkets, big shopping centers, and that the more vulnerable actors like small companies, small shoppers have a harder time to get a same access to the market, same access to consumers. Often it is logistic choices or comfort rather than quality that makes the choice of suppliers. And what we try to do is we say, okay, we recognize the problem, we engage the business community, the retail community in taking their share of responsibility. So we tried in long months of consultation to really address there was an attitude of denial of no, this is only bad mouthing, this is the media, this is as usual, the smalls attacking the big, and there was a lot of irritation. And what we said with our report, we're not going to add tension or point finger, but we're going to try to, together with stakeholders, to put the debate down to earth, based on data, based on facts. We're asking the Commission to take an active role as an independent, credible body to help mapping down what is a manifestly unfair commercial practice. How often we see it. Is it broadly recognized that this is unfair? Is it happening often? Is it delisting without notice, for instance? Is it, yes, kicking out from the market a retailer when the contract was saying something else? Is it standard contract imposed on a supplier that cannot be really negotiated? So how do we really list, map down, assess, and see what are the practices. I have to say the stakeholder has been really responding with great engagement, helping us also, asking their members, what is it you feel, asking small companies, what is it you feel is an unfair practice, what is it that really affects your daily life. And then we are calling to the Commission to also assess the existing legal instruments, like of course competition law, antitrust law, and at national level unfair commercial practices, rules and legislation, and see if it's sufficient, if it's adequate, if really small companies have access to it. We have felt by many of the people we talk to that sometimes they don't dare to access the legal system, they don't dare to go to court because they're afraid to lose market, they're afraid that the big retailer will say, sorry, I buy from someone else. So we're also looking at ways to facilitate the use of the existing legal system, the use of the courts. We've been talking about anonymous complaints, for instance, but also we have been calling on the business federations to help informing of the existing instruments like Solvit. I'm sure all of you know about Solvit. I'm sure all of you know about the internal market information system. It's important that also small companies, small players, the most vulnerable players, know what are their rights and how to get their rights in the current system. We're also discussing in Parliament alternative dispute mechanism, collective redress mechanisms, that's more for consumers. So we are looking at many different ways that is not only top regulation and top legislation to deal with unfair practices.
On a related note, what is your assessment of the rapid development of private labels?
Yeah, that's another very controversial issue that I've seen you have there to deal with. Also on private label, the debate is very actual, it's very polarized. And the Commission has come out with a report that said that so far it seems that there is no distortion of competition. But as usual, the picture is complex. What the position that I have been taking, and I am happy that Parliament has so far supported, is that private label can be a fantastic opportunity for small companies actually to develop and to be innovative and to broaden their reach to other markets in increasing the volumes. At the same time, we have to really be careful that it's not instead a way to kill small brands that could have a possibility to grow as brands, while if they are sort of forced to produce in private label and the consumer doesn't know who they are, doesn't have the possibility to recognize the brand, then of course that would have the opposite effect. So private label should not be once again, not top-driven by some board saying by 2012 we will have 40% of private label and we just kick out of the shelves some of the brands. It should be driven by consumers, recognizing that private label gives more diversity, more choice, and that the consumer gets really a complete possibility to get the right information and really choose between a branded product and a private label with a full picture. I'm not sure this happens at the moment. I'm not sure that all consumers get really the full picture of what they're buying. Often the price difference is much more evident than the quality difference, and that's where we really have to fill in with better information and better awareness.
After having consulted in depth during 8 months, what do you expect now from the stakeholders? How can we keep the momentum and measure results?
Yes, the line I've been driving is dialogue. Better dialogue, more intensive dialogue, more constructive dialogue. Dialogue as a way of really addressing this tension that exists in the supply chain, and there are lose-lose. So I'm very happy to say that we really have engaged in this enormous consultation with the Ecommerce, European Retailer Roundtable, the consumer organizations, the independent retailers, the trade unions. I'm definitely forgetting a lot, of course, apart from the European institutions. And I'm extremely satisfied to see that there are signs that we are moving from confrontation, from back-to-back, from denial to dialogue, actually, and that somehow the stakeholders have understood and taken into their hands, are owning the process of solving their own problems. So the position I have taken, I'm glad I got trust and credibility from my colleagues so far, and hope this will be confirmed in plenum in June, because then we will have a strong mandate also to really get the stakeholders to show results and to be able to continue to follow up on what they are doing. We have seen signs of coming up with principles, for instance, of good practices, of conducts that should be better, identifying together where the problems are, where the unfair practices are, and fitting in with this informal dialogue in the platforms that the Commission is already running so well. For instance, the B2B commercial platform of the high-level forum on the competitiveness of the food industry, which is one of the big dialogue forums at the highest level. There also we have taken the position to let the stakeholders in dialogue decide what would be the best way forward. Unfair practices exist a lot in the food business, but not only in the food business, like in the automobile business as well. We will leave it to them to decide if the platform that exists is too narrow to only food, if they want to broaden it, if it should be more decision-making oriented, not only on industrial policy, but also on commercial practices and on like retail. And we are going to follow up very, very closely what is happening within this platform. We are very happy that the retailers are really filling in. When I say retailers, I mean the whole supply chain, filling in the process extremely constructively, and we're watching and monitoring and working with them.
What are the concrete recommendations for the way ahead that you make in your report?
Yes, concrete problems, concrete response. First, we are going to have a yearly retail roundtable, which is not a conference where we serve coffee, is really a way to bring in our colleagues, of course, from the institution, European institution and Parliament, and the stakeholders who are interested and involved and concerned in the process to take stock, follow up, say, okay, what did we achieve in 1 year? Is this really a living document? These recommendations, this proposal, and the dialogue that we are following, okay, how can we really be concrete and move forward? Can we continue to trust the stakeholders? Or it's better to come in now with regulation legislation because we didn't see enough results. What more can we do also to continue to keep on the European agenda the positive contribution to job, to competition, to growth, to keeping inflation low that retailers are giving? How can we precisely continue to solve freedom of movement, access to the market, right of establishment, and sustainable consumption, for instance? The other big achievement, I think, is that we call for an action plan for retail. It's the first time we do that in the European Union. And the action plan for retail is really to look at sectoral approaches, to take up the challenges and the problems that remain, and at the same time give this dignity and priority position to the retail in the context of our work on bringing forward market completion, market integration, and the Single Market Act. Two very important decisions. We're also calling for a European payment system, a revision of the SEPA, the Single European, the Single European Payment Area. And there we need faster transfer, more secure transfer, and credit cards that are accepted and available throughout Europe with more transparency and reduced fees. The Commission is working on it, and we trust that together we will achieve. There will be a major release of resources in the retail market. We are calling for the Commission to be tougher in monitoring transposition of existing legislation, implementation and enforcement of existing legislation. We are calling for fast track in infringement procedures. They exist, they can be used, but experience shows that procedure is very long and bureaucratic and untransparent. So we hope really that the Commission will come forward with ways that are more efficient in bringing to bear when there are obvious violations of internal market legislation that affects retailers.
What about online retail? Do you address e-commerce?
Yes, absolutely. E-commerce is one of the most untapped potential of the single market. It is also developing e-commerce is also a way, of course, to deal with the problem of access to the market for everybody, consumers that are living in remote areas, isolated areas, and so on and so forth. The digital Europe, the digital agenda, which I'm so happy that is central part of the new Single Market Act, broadband for everybody, is really important to develop an enormous potential of the internal market. Concretely, we are calling for the payment system to be more secure online, registration of domains. They are very fragmented at the moment. We need much more harmonization. Of course, the Consumer Rights Directive, which is really dealing with harmonizing consumer rights throughout 27 member states, is going to be a great contribution also to kickstart and kick off e-commerce. And of course, we need also to have e-legitimation, a mutual recognition of identification and authentication of signature throughout the European Union. We need to inject trust into the online retail.
Retailers are also drivers of innovation. In your report, you encourage them to do more, in particular on food waste. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Another big part, of course, of retailers' shared responsibility is to promote sustainable consumption. It's in terms of innovative products that are healthy, that are taking care of the environment. It's about giving better information, taking responsibility in responsible marketing, and continuing to invest in innovation, research and development. Then there are 4 areas where retailers have an enormous responsibilities, and there are already a lot is happening already in the so-called green responsibility, together with the social responsibility. Energy efficiency. Think just, if you have the right refrigeration in the refrigerators in shops, how much you can really affect the environment. Logistic and transport, rationalizing, and there are so many, the way ahead, there are so many, the last kilometers, concepts that are really being developed now that help also small and medium enterprises, which is crucial to have access to rational logistic system. Waste disposal, of course, it's enormous in every fresh food shop, for instance. And then my darling, which is a campaign and appeal against food waste. On food waste, I'm happy to say that I really feel that there is a consensus between big retailers, small retailers, suppliers, in taking action and responsibility, starting in their own shop, starting in their own way of producing. It's economically viable, it's environmental friendly, and it's a moral imperative. And also through campaigns, through information in the shops. Think about retailers, they meet 1 million people every day to help with recipes, how can you use the food from the day before, how can you better package, how can you better conserve things in your refrigerator. There is really a lot that can be done to reduce food waste in the shops, reduce food waste in the production, and reduce food waste at home.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm glad I was here. I look forward to continued dialogue with you and to your comments. You can find me on Twitter, on Facebook, and look forward to comments to my report as we move now to the final vote in plenum. Thank you so much.